Coming soon to a theater near you. Derek Whitmore as the CEO. Also starring Brian, Hannah, and John. Will they survive? Summer 2020. Theaters.
Let's move away from lies and fears. Perhaps it's time to leave. Free from how you look or what they say. Like a lion runs wild through the wilderness. Free from showing off a living faith. Like the eagles flying high, dancing with the air. There's breath in your lungs to breathe. Say, God, take this mask away. You see, he won't let you stay. Living in hollow days.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of ShatterCast. We are very excited to have you with us today. I'm joined by the president, CEO, founder, all-powerful Derek Whitmore.
You give me too much credit here. Thank you.
Yeah. Brian, Hannah, and obviously I'm joined by myself.
Quite the introduction.
I am always here. Well, you know, he's the guy.
He gets first and last name.
I tried
I don't want my last name
I
out
tried to
there,
do bigger
though.
introductions in the past, and Derek pulled me aside and said, "This is about him."
This did not happen.
This is not true.
This is actually our segment on humility.
For our fake point today.
Today, if you couldn't tell from the super ridiculous intro, we are talking about trailers and some trailers that have dropped in the last month to few weeks over the end of 2019, going into the beginning of 2020. We're very excited about some of these positives and negatives all around. The first trailer that we're going to talk about is going to be Morbius.
If you don't know who that is, I can't blame you.
That you're in the majority.
Yes.
You are in the majority.
Of nerds still, too. Like, I feel like there's probably a lot of even, like, casual fans of stuff, and they're just...
People have heard of Lizard, Doc Ock.
Yeah.
Morbius, not so much.
Not so much. But the trailer dropped. It's super intense.
Yeah.
You know, Jared Leto?
Leto.
Yeah.
Leto?
Leto. We're going Leto.
Hey,
name, right?
Leto.
That's your new name. We're signing up.
I like 30 Seconds to Mars. Doesn't mean that I have any idea how to say his name. But I guessed correctly. Anyway, I think I'm excited about his performance in that more so than I was for the Joker.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't... Leto...
Kind of a low bar there, though.
You're not wrong.
He seems more of a vampire than a clown.
You know,
Yeah?
actually, yes.
Ever alive?
It's like he's got like the look already. You know, he looks like he's from Transylvania. Is that what you're saying?
Wow. I didn't say that.
Long-haired
Is that what you're
European,
saying?
kind of like.
Is that what people from Transylvania look like?
That's what the vampires from Transylvania look
Sorry
like.
for all of our
I'm thinking
audio
about,
listeners.
Bram Stoker. Oh yeah, yeah. I made a really interesting face.
It was great.
It was definitely a Bram Stoker face.
No.
Yeah. So what are you guys' thoughts after watching the trailer?
If you guys don't know who Morbius is, he is an kind of a lesser known Spider-Man villain. He came out the Comic Codes Authority regulated comic books, and they had rules against supernatural creatures and all this stuff. As soon as they lifted that, I believe Marvel came out with this Morbius guy who's sort of a take on a vampire, like a science vampire type guy. I think that's correct. I know there's somebody out there checking me already at home. He was in the 90s Spider-Man movies, or not movie, cartoons. So that's where I got to know him a little bit. There they had rules that they couldn't, vampires couldn't suck blood or whatever. So he had actually these suckers on his hands. And
Since it's child's TV.
yeah, and he could
really do
use
that.
plasma. So he's kind of he's got an interesting history to him. Not a lot of people know about him, but yeah he's a very interesting villain to make a standalone movie about. They did that with Venom. Some people like Venom. I thought it was okay. Wasn't a huge fan. Kind of curious what they're going to do with this movie.
Do we know who's directing Morbius?
I don't. Fact checker. We'll find out for you.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the trailer itself, it makes me interested to see what the movie's going to bring. I like the aesthetic of the movie. I feel like there's just a lot of different I don't know, the tone of the trailer itself had a few different moments that were very drastically different, which tells me that I think there's going to be sort of a good breadth of tone in the movie. It's not just going to be one stale piece. What do we got?
I think
So his name is Daniel Espinoso.
there you go.
Daniel
Okay.
Espinozo.
I'm not as familiar with his work. I've heard his name before, but I was trying to think of, the tone of Venom
Yeah.
was
Right.
pretty silly
Yeah.
Yeah.
to an extent, and it doesn't look like Morbius is going to be that silly.
Not
It looks, it's looking almost darker than Venom.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
PG-13.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if this one is R, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We all thought Venom was going to be rated R. So
That's
Yeah.
true.
It
Which
hasn't
is
been rated
interesting
yet.
because if they ever do bring, Tom Holland's Spider-Man into interaction with Jared Leto's Morbius, then that's going to be a weird dynamic.
Yeah. And in the trailer, it had the Vulture in it, which is kind of cool. So we know it's linked somehow to like the Spider-Man movies and Venom. And I'm curious what Sony and Marvel are trying to do with all this stuff. Sony keeps doing these standalone Spider-Man villains movies. For me, it doesn't work quite as well. One of the things I love about Venom or even a Morbius or whatever is Spider-Man. They're, when they clash and stuff like that. And I'm not sure I'm on the bandwagon for all these standalone movies, but we'll see how it goes. What do you guys, anything else?
I mean,
Are
I
they
think
still
I'm
trying-
enjoying just the content, the fact that we have content. That's good.
True.
And it looks like it's going to be quality content.
are they still trying to build up to like the Sinister Six thing, or is that like canceled?
That's a great question.
That's a good question. I haven't heard.
I think that was trending on Twitter when the trailer dropped.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
Morbius, yeah.
And with Vulture in it, it's more likely
Yeah.
that they might.
Yeah.
It may
And-
not be the traditional Sinister Six we think of if they're adding Morbius, but they could be.
It could be. And honestly, they could also just kind of be holding that close to their chest. They've kind of teased about it, and then they're going to wait, and then they're just going to drop this, Sinister Six, which would be cool. That would be cool. So that's not the only trailer we're going to talk about, though. We got a few more we wanted to get to. The next one we're going to talk about is Wonder Woman 1984,
Yeah.
featuring Chris Pine.
Gal Gadot too.
Well, her name is in
Kristen
the title,
Wiig.
so there's that. But Chris Pine, wasn't expecting to see him in the trailer, let alone the movie.
Chris
right?
is back.
So I was really surprised that if they're going to have him in the movie in whatever capacity it ends up being, whether he's actually back or if he's a token of her imagination or if the villain is doing something to mess with her through him, whatever that construct is for why he's back, was really surprised that they would drop that in the trailer because I don't think that they needed the hype for people to go see it because Wonder Woman was pretty well received in general. I think a lot of people would go to the sequel. So I'm really curious why they decided to reveal that.
Yeah. I'm glad Steve Trevor's back. I thought him and Gal Gadot had good chemistry, and it's interesting. Their roles are kind of flipped now. In the first Wonder Woman was kind of the person out of step with society and stuff like that because she had been on the island for so long. So Chris Pine had to explain everything to her. He plays Steve Trevor. And this new one, Steve Trevor has been gone for years. We don't know why he's back, but Wonder Woman is now trying to explain society and things like that. So I'm excited that he's back. And I love the vibe. I love the 80s theme. You got them all correct.
Right.
The font is correct.
When you get the neon sign
Yes.
stencil of 1984
Back to days.
and the blur as it's moving forward, yeah, I'm very
I was
excited.
a little disappointed that even though Kristen Wiig is in the trailer, you don't actually get to see Cheetah quite yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it makes it. They definitely. I'm curious if she becomes Cheetah in the movie, or if she's getting close to Wonder Woman to do something. Right. So, is she a friend of Wonder Woman who becomes Cheetah, or is she Cheetah from the get go and she's working her way into her life to do X, Y, and Z.
Pretty interesting. We know that the main villain is also, besides Cheetah, Maxwell Lord, I believe, who has an interesting history with Wonder Woman. Don't have time to geek out about all of that. He's kind of a lesser known DC villain, but the guy who plays him is the same guy who plays the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, wow.
little insider knowledge for you.
Which we will talk about in the coming weeks.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Teasers
Yeah.
within an episode on teasers.
Any-
As the DC resident fan, I'm hoping that since the Infinity Saga is over, DC is going to have their chance to kind of slip in. bring in all the good stuff.
Oh, like with Wonder Woman and
Yeah.
what
There's some
else
hope for you.
There is. They've had a couple really good movies. Out of about 15, but they've had a couple really good movies.
They're trying.
But even that isn't the last trailer that we're going to talk about. The last one we have is Black Widow, which after years of speculation and it's coming, it's not coming, it's coming, it's not coming, we got a trailer.
Yes.
Yay!
And we got one back in December. I want to say it was like the beginning of December. And then we just got another one here in January with more detail. The first one was very much a teaser, but this one is really more info. I don't know. I was really excited to see Hopper. I don't know the actor's name.
It's Dave. Is it David?
Dave something.
David something.
David. Ooh, yeah, David something.
We're trying to look that up.
Fact checker's looking it up for us.
Guy
But yeah,
who plays Hopper on Stranger Things.
Yeah, he's just fun for me, and I like his character, and I'm excited to see what they do with Black Widow's family.
Yeah.
He
It
was
was
also Hellboy.
interesting to see
He was.
True.
Florence brought in, who plays the sister, and Rachel Weisz brought in as
Yeah.
like, and so I think when I was considering or imagining what Black Widow movie would look like, not really knowing a whole lot about Black Widow other than what has been presented to me through the MCU, I wasn't imagining family. Like I wasn't imagining her like actual family to be part of the story. So I think that's the most intriguing thing to me.
Do we know
What's
where
the-
in the timeline?
David
this happened?
Harbour.
Harbour.
David Harbour. That's it. Yep. Thank you.
Do we know like where in the timeline this is happening? Like obviously before Avengers.
So
but,
this is a little confusing because they
Before
talk
Endgame.
about there's something in there about Budapest. We keep hearing about Budapest, so we're now going to see a little bit, but they keep having flashes of even further in the past from that. So I'm kind of curious if the movie's going to span a few timelines. So
Yeah.
we'll kind of see.
Yeah, that would actually be a really interesting point. Like, what if they have like a few different acts of her life?
I think
That'd
she
be
is
interesting.
part of the Avengers during this movie.
Is she?
At least for part of it. So there was a time, I think it was after Captain America Civil War, maybe, or I can't remember if that, it might be a different one. Anyways, there's a time where she was in the outs with the government. And so I think that's when most of it takes place. But again, they have scenes from Budapest. They have all these other scenes. So again, I'm kind of curious if they're going to cross a couple different time periods in here. So yeah, I'm excited. We're just getting it. We kept, as you were saying, John,
We've been wanting it.
yeah, for so long. And after Endgame came out, to be honest, just where her characters left, and I was like, okay, I guess we're done with that. But they kept talking about it, and now we see the trailer and
Yeah.
we get her. And there's kind of a race in a way. There wasn't a standalone superhero like lady movie,
Yeah.
and we were wondering who DC or Marvel, which one's gonna come out first. And of course, Wonder Woman came out first. It was a pretty good movie. So I didn't know how Black Widow would come, but I'm pretty hype after the trailer. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think they've been planning on doing it, and the only setback has been Scarlett Johansson's schedule. If I believe,
makes sense.
I mean, you can fact check this, but I think she's the highest paid actress right now in the world.
Wow.
Good job, ScarJo.
So imagine if you are that the highest. If you have that title, you're probably pretty busy.
Yeah.
So I think I've heard in interviews in the past that really the only thing that was keeping this movie from being made was her schedule, and now she's actually available to do it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that happens when we talk about trailers is, for me, one of the best parts of going to a movie, besides if the movie ends up being great, are all of the previews beforehand. Like, you know, I know some people, they're like, come on, let's get the movie going. That's why I'm here.
I'm right about Scarlett Johansson.
It's really great to get to see the previews, see what movies are coming up. Usually I'll have my phone out with the brightness dimmed. Okay, it's a dark theater, and I'm
He's one of
making a
those people.
list. I'm making a list of movies that catch my eye that I want to make sure that I follow. And it's really great because you get an opportunity, you know, say don't judge a book by its cover, and you have a movie coming out that's 2.5 hours long, and you get to see 90 seconds of it and decide whether or not the other 2 hours are worth going to see. And so when a trailer comes out, you have to make these judgment calls, and And is the trailer enticing enough to make me go to the movie, or is the trailer maybe not that enticing, but I'm going to go because I know the studio or I know the director or the writer is fantastic. For me, when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, I was very unfamiliar with the entire thing. I actually had zero familiarity with that line of comics, and I thought that the idea was super silly.
Right.
And I wasn't looking forward to it. But Marvel,
They did it again.
they did it again. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to trust them. I'm going to go to the theater. I'm going to give it a shot. Thank you, Chris Pratt. And everyone else who was involved in
Joss
those
Whedon.
movies. Yeah, like James Gunn and I mean Dave Bautista,
Yeah.
good old wrestler.
And Rose. Oh, I totally.
I
forgot
wasn't
her
trying to
name.
list all of the cast. Yeah, I was just
Vin
saying.
Diesel.
Yeah, I was just saying. I was pleasantly surprised with that. And in life, there are opportunities that we have where, maybe as Christians, we're spending time with God and we get glimpses of what's coming occasionally, where He'll talk to us, where He'll put a passion in our heart. He'll give us a little bit of direction. Very rarely do we get to see the whole picture, and yet we have to choose to follow that or not. And you should always choose to follow it, by the way. It's kind of the better way to live there, typically, I've found. But what are you guys thinking about that? That there are times where we only get to see a little piece of the picture, and yet we have to be able to trust, who's giving us that picture.
Yeah, I think that's perfect for our faith point. I think there's times in life where we get a little bit of information and the trailer starts playing in our head about what life might look like. So you might get, and sometimes it's a good thing, maybe you get a raise at work and you're like already thinking, oh, how can I spend this money? But sometimes you might lose a job, or you might hear of a loved one who passed away, or you might get a bad doctor's report. I was just sharing with the team, just a quick personal story. At the beginning of this year, it kind of started a little hectic for me because I had like kind of a bad health scare. I was going to the doctor. We didn't know what was going on. Could have ranged from cancer to me being needing surgery. Praise the Lord, everything turned out fine. God is amazing that way. But in my head, a trailer started playing of all the bad things that could happen. And it got to a point where I just said, you know what, God, I trust you. I'm praying that good stuff happens, but even if it doesn't go the way I want it to, I'm going to trust you. And I think just like in the trailer in a movie, if you trusted the director, you're still going to participate and you're still going to show up and see what happens. And so I think there are a lot of people in life, and just going to that situation myself just made me empathize with people who are waiting on exams, coming back from cancer reports and things like that. Like it could be nerve-wracking. But there's a point where you just have to get to, God, I'm praying for this, but no matter what, I'm going to trust you. There's a cool verse in the Bible, Jeremiah 29:11, that says, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans of good and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope." And that's been my favorite verse since I was a high schooler. And when I was going through everything, that verse just kept coming to my head. God has good plans, and I can trust Him. So no matter what, I'm just going to follow Him. And we know sometimes stuff doesn't always work the way we want them to. But we can still trust God that He will make good happen, not just for us, but for those around us. So
Sometimes I think about when I see a trailer and I'm excited about the movie based on the trailer. And then I turn to someone and I'm like, oh my gosh, that looks so great, doesn't it? And then they're like, I don't know. I'm skeptical. And when you think about these dreams and these visions for your life that God places on your heart and you get excited about it, and you talk to someone about it and they're like, I don't know, I'm skeptical. I think about that in this context where, sometimes the trailer that you get, the vision you get is a great one, and we need to trust God that it's going to work out, that it's going to be good, and that no matter what other people are saying about it, it's all in His hands.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
That's good.
There's actually a community of people that once they watch the trailers, they try and predict oh, this means this is going to happen, and all this is going to happen. So I feel like sometimes we might do that with our lives.
Yeah.
We see this little glimpse and then we start to think, oh, that means this is going to happen. But we have to have faith in what He wants and not try and take control.
Yeah, that it's speculation at the end of the day, And you make a great point. I love when a trailer drops and it's, a minute and 20 seconds long, and there are 23-minute YouTube videos about the trailer. And I'm just like, y'all got a lot of time on your hands.
Y'all need to chill.
And two,
Frame by
like,
frame.
right? And when you watch them, like, so much more often than not, they speak with such confidence about their interpretation and their speculation and such. And more often than not, it's like 50-50 on whether they're actually right about some of this stuff. And some of it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. They've been leading there for 6 movies, so of course Marvel's going to do X. Like, I called Professor Hulk before Infinity War came out, and I didn't feel special about it because to me it was kind of obvious. Like, it made sense with the character and what they were doing with Hulk that was going to happen. But if I had been wrong, like, oh well, And the thing is, like, when we get a little glimpse of what our future could hold, when God does whisper those little things to us, our mind can start racing, like you were saying, Derek, with potential futures and possibilities. And the importance there is not to get in love with an idea that you've come up with yourself based on something God told you, and then disappointed when it doesn't play out that way. And secondly, to not be riddled with anxiety and fear just because you don't know all of the details, right? Like, we just, it comes back to whether you're thinking it's good or you're thinking it's bad. We have to trust God. And we have to just march forward and trust him that he does know the plans that he has for us, that they are good and that they aren't for evil, and they're to help us, and that he loves us and he cares for us. So
That's cool.
I mean, that's all I got. Derek, you got any?
Just one last thing. There's another passage we talked about before, James 1:2-4, that talks about count it all joy when you go through trials of all kinds, because God can use that to build your character, to paraphrase. And it doesn't mean be happy that bad stuff is happening. It just means that we can have joy knowing that God can use even bad stuff, not just for our benefit, but to help other people. So again,
there's a purpose.
There's a purpose. So when you get that stuff in life that kind of throws you for a loop, that you start this trailer playing, just pause, pray, talk to some people to get encouraged, and have hope, because God can use even that for some amazing stuff. So
yeah,
get another person's point of view, not just yours.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Hannah, my wife, whom I love. I'm sorry for just saying Brian and Hannah. Hannah, Brian, Derek, thank you guys so much. Thank you for watching, because if you don't watch, what's the point? We're just hanging out. Just kidding. I like hanging out with you guys. With that. Y'all have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Coming soon to a theater near you.
Wow.
Will they survive?
Wow.
Summer 2020.
Wow.
Theaters.
Wow. Don't cut it. Just do it.
we're very professional, as you see.
That ended up being way funnier than I thought it would be. It's worth not doing the actual thing now. Just go. Wow. All right.